Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to withinsightsradio.com. Sit back and enjoy the show. Welcome to withinsightsradio.com. I'm your host, Iggy Garcia, joined by
David Two Crows.
And Adriana Arts.
Yes,
there we are.
We are your hosts for tonight, and we want to thank you for joining us. David is in studio. Adriana is in an undisclosed location in the universe someplace.
Mm-hmm.
And never mind. But anyhow.
Yeah.
So we're here live, and we're broadcasting, and we're going to be talking a little bit about Standing Rock and, you know, the journey that I went on with three friends of mine. But before we start, I want to see how you guys have been doing, and before I dominate the show, I guess, today.
Okay, well.
How would you start, David?
Okay, sure. While you were on your journey, I took a journey down to see my parents and help them celebrate their 90th birthday. My dad's 90th birthday was while I was there, and my mom's in January, and also their 68th anniversary. So a big milestone for them and the family. I hadn't seen my brother and my sister, who were there in years. They're also in Arizona now, full time. I think because they've discussed it and maybe want to kind of keep an eye on mom and dad as they get older. But they're still plugging away. You know, my dad's got earplugs or ear hearing aids, and he has got double vision in his left eye, but he's still going strong. You know, and my mom is doing well too. You know, they've had their health issues as they've the last few years, but you know, they've made it through, and they're just taking it one day at a time. And I got to catch up with a few people that I knew, and then there were a bunch of people who knew me that I didn't know because they knew me when I was just a kid. You know,
okay, cool.
I remember them, so it was great. Had a great anniversary dinner, and it was a time for me to kind of take a step back and look at my parents in a different light too, you know, and see them as they're aging, and kind of, you know, when you're living with your parents and you're kind of under their jurisdiction, so to speak, it's one thing, but when you're out from that and you can kind of see them as individuals and different in a different light, it puts it, you know, it gives you a different appreciation or a different perspective on who they are. So I was doing that, and also part of my mission there too was to capture as many old pictures as I could, because my mom has albums and albums and albums of pictures.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then my grandmother also has pictures that she put in there that was like back to 1904. And
wow.
So I captured as many of those as I could, and I'm going to pass them on to my daughter here, you know, in the USB whenever I can send it to her. But yeah, family history was a focus, and was kind of important to me while I was there. So that was what I did. I had a very pleasant trip. But in contrast, I mean, you were out there on the front lines of a very important issue and very powerful experiences you were having. So I was following that as much as I could on Facebook. But like I put in my post, I said I'm very torn. You know, my heart is torn because I want to be there with you. At the same time, I know it's important to be there with my family, and I was glad I did that. But
absolutely.
So, you know, that was my week last week while you were doing what you were doing. So.
Cool. And how about you, Adriana? What were you doing?
Well, David, I'm glad you got to go visit your family and see everyone. That's very important. I, too, have kind of been on a quest more, I guess it's more like a quest. Not too many people know this, but I have a brother who would be 5 years older than me had he lived, but he did not live past his birth. And I've been doing some of my digging into my roots, and I went down home and to a cemetery where a lot of my relatives are buried, and my brother is also buried in a cemetery down there. And he does not have a marker on his grave, and the circumstances around his birth/death are according to my mother, who was in labor and who, of course, I would believe, she was in labor, and my brother, of course, was alive and kicking and ready to be born. And at some point during her labor, it was determined that he was going to be a breech birth. And this was back in 1960, just so that you know how far back we're going. But anyway, and I believe back then they were supposed to, a doctor would have been required to turn the baby into position, but I'm not 100% sure about that. And as it turned out, an intern was sent in to turn my brother into position. And after that happened, my mother never felt any more movement out of my brother. So, as it turns out, he was guest listed as a stillborn. But in my research, I'm trying to make this a little bit short. In my research, I've contacted the courthouse and the records department, and the only proof that I have even of his birth or death is a picture from one of the ancestry websites where someone had actually went to the vital statistics and took a picture of the death register from that year. And that is the only thing that I could find with his actual birth date, his name, my parents' name, and the doctor on there. And so anyway, I called the courthouse a few times and requested a copy of if they could find his death certificate. And I figured that's what would have been produced. And the courthouse could not find any record at all with his name, period. So that I eventually got online and filled out the paperwork, the form to request then a birth certificate, because I thought, well, he's listed in the death register book, but maybe they didn't produce a death certificate, so there should be a birth certificate. And so I sent off the form with the, payment, the copy of my ID, blah, blah, blah. Waited over a week, and then I get this letter back because I also requested a copy of my birth certificate also. We were born at the same hospital. And I got a letter back with a handwritten note that said, "We're sorry, we do not have records for either one of you." So, yeah, I was like, well, let me call them tomorrow. So I kind of knew why my record would not be under that last name, and that's only because legally my name was changed when I was a child. I had no say-so in that. But why there was not a record for him, the people at the courthouse could not even tell me. So then I was directed to the main court, I guess, and I ended up getting a hold of a supervisor. And even he could not find anything while we were on the phone for about 30 minutes. And finally he said, "I'm going to have to call you back." So he dug some digging and called me back, and he said that he did find this information, but that I could not do this. My mother would have to get online, get this form, and she would have to specifically request this record herself. So I've been talking, of course, with my mother through all of this, and it's not been an easy subject to approach her about to begin with. I'm very cautious and careful about bringing up, something that has really never has been put to rest for her. And there's just so many circumstances around this, even going to the cemetery, and I finally it took me a week to even find a phone number to the cemetery. I contacted them to see if they had record of where my brother was buried. and the cemetery does not have a record of him being there. So basically, I have been fighting a battle of proving that this child ever existed, even for a second, from birth to death. It doesn't matter. I've really came up with a lot of roadblocks, and any kind of red tape it seems like I've had to go through, I've been going through that. But I will be victorious. I am getting there, and slowly but surely. So that's just kind of been my quest. But again, it has to do with my ancestors, you know, and some things that happened in the past in our family that weren't exactly pretty, and from the outside looking in, and from actually my mother's actual story that she's told me of everything. You know, it almost seems like there's been a cover-up of things regarding his birth/death. So it's been interesting, and it's kind of been a struggle, but like I said, I will be victorious. So I'm getting there slowly but surely. And that's about it.
Yeah, that's the thing I've discovered too when I start researching my past. Sometimes you get more questions than you get answers. Like with my grandmother, I would wish I could just bring her back for just an hour to talk to her tell her about the things that went on. Because like there's some conflicting stories, and there's, my grandfather, she married and was just with him for just a couple of years, and then he supposedly died, but I can't find any death certificate for him either. My dad found out that he could actually be someone else's son. So it's sometimes it gets a little convoluted, but it's a mystery that, if I don't solve it, maybe someone in the future will pick it up and take it up. But it's important to know the past, and I think as we get older, that becomes even more important for us. So, but good luck on your investigations too, my dear.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And Iggy.
All right.
Yeah. Of course, we have the election coming up tomorrow. That could be a whole show in itself. But,
yeah, let's take a moment to pause on that one.
Yeah.
Pause. Okay. I tell you, the election's coming tomorrow. I just tell everybody, if you're going to vote, fine. If you're not, don't. I mean, it's fine. I mean, at this point, I think everybody's kind of made up their mind. If you haven't made up your mind by now, I don't know, maybe you're just drunk or something.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, maybe that's a little rude, but...
Yeah, I made a little video about this earlier and posted it too, about how, this can be a very divisive time for us. There's been a lot of emotion, a lot of conflict and confrontation, and dividing up into camps, and, Hillary's a crook and Trump is an idiot, and, a womanizer and a racist, and just all the things you hear out there. More so than any election that I can remember, that this has been so divisive. And the thing is, there's going to become a tomorrow and a tomorrow and a day after that, and so we're going to have to learn to move forward past all this. And I just hope that there's not a big division that comes in our country and armed camps, setting up on either side of the factions. It's just we are at a point where that could happen. Seriously, we could end up with some sort of civil war or revolution in this country if we're not careful, if we don't remember our roots and the fact that we are one people in one nation, despite all the differences that we have a commonality too, and that tradition of equality and freedoms and things that the values that our country was founded on. Maybe we haven't practiced them lately or experienced them the way they're supposed to be experienced, but they apply to all of us. And so I just wanted to send a prayer out for unity and for healing after this election comes. So that was my message in that little video.
My message in my video was just, do whatever you want to do, really, at this point. Those people stay rich regardless if whoever wins. Donald Trump's still a billionaire. Hillary Clinton's still a millionaire. My pocketbook ain't going to change too much. And, but, they're going to be well off regardless what happens. And, you know, may the best man or woman win, you know.
Yeah.
And may they do the best job they could possibly do. And maybe she'll prove us all wrong if she wins. Maybe he'll prove us all wrong. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know who's going to win. I can't even guess, you know. I can't even. Usually I could say, hey, yeah, this guy's going to. But you watch. If you're a guy or a girl who buys into polls, you know, the polls, I don't know. The way things have gone this year, I don't trust the polls.
No.
You know, I don't trust the polls at all. The polls do not impress me.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be so extreme from one end to the other, you know, it is close though. I'll say that this election is close. There is a lot that went on. You know, we could talk about it on the show.
Maybe next Monday.
Maybe next Monday we'll talk after the election.
Yeah.
You know what we thought, and we're going a bit. You know, just exercise your right to vote or not vote.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm not going to be that person that says, "Well, you have no right to complain." You know, that's
who are we to say
I mean,
that?
that's
right?
crap. You know, that's an exercise. That's a sustained vote is also. A vote that not given is also a vote.
A statement.
Yeah, a statement, you know, a protest. So, all right. Well,
okay.
That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
Right. Do you want to take a break and then jump into it? Or?
Yeah, that's good. We can do that. Get a break real quick. We're going to take a really quick break, and then we're going to jump into the journey to Standing Rock and kind of tell you the things that I went through and what I saw my friends go through who were there with me. And it's pretty intense story, so it's not really going to get too political per se. I'm just going to give my view of what I saw and how I experienced Standing Rock. Okay, we'll be right back.
You are listening to WithinsightsRadio.com, your free online resource for achieving self-discovery and inspiration. With Insights Radio is a listener-supported radio station, and your donations are greatly appreciated. We cover a variety of topics, interviews surrounding the metaphysical and holistic and natural medicine, alternative healing modalities, and much more. Thank you for tuning in to WithinsightsRadio.com.
You are listening to WithinsightsRadio.com on the Blog Talk Radio Network, your free online holistic publication resource radio for trusting your intuition, achieving self-discovery, and following your soul self. You are listening to WithinsightsRadio.com with your hosts, Iggy Garcia, David Tucros, and Adriana Arts. Now back to the show.
Welcome back to With Insights. I'm host David Two Crows, and I'm here with Iggy Garcia, my friend and metaphysical brother, and Adriana Arts, and he's going to tell us about his experience at the Standing Rock Camp and the Sacred Stone Camp out there in North Dakota. Can you give some background, maybe tell us what led you up to even wanting to go out there and how that evolved?
Kind of like how this happened was, you know, it was one of those things that kind of just ran by my screen on Facebook or in the news media. I was aware that something was going on, but I wasn't sure of the whole, you know, details, how in depth it was and what was going on. I was just thinking, just another pipeline going down, you know, what's the big deal? I mean, they've laid so many in the past, so what's one more pipeline? But that's just my westernized thinking, I guess. Being, you know, just in this little box that I live in and not being compassionate to that there are other people living somewhere else and in certain areas.
Right.
And so I kind of looked in it little by little and just kind of watched it, and I saw the videos, and I started getting kind of frustrated. I started seeing how people were being treated, and I guess one of the final things was I saw the battle on the 1806, the bridge on 1806, that video, it's infamous video you see now, where people are getting sprayed and beaten and clubbed and where the cars are charred and burned. I've been on that bridge. And, you know, and I said, man, what the heck's going on? And what kind of triggered me was a friend of mine, I posted something about that. There's no media coverage for Standing Rock or North Dakota. And I was flipping through the channels, and I went to MMBC or something like that, which I don't really watch. And my friend, one of my friends posted, "Oh, look, hey, they posted something," like trying to be sarcastic and funny with me.
Yeah.
And it kind of pissed me off. I was like, yeah, I'm watching it too, like, and I was thinking, what a douche, I'm like, but that's what friends do. Sometimes they challenge you. And so I'm going, that's one time that I've ever seen on the media. And then I went to bed, and then I don't know if it was the night before or after, I forget, but I was sleeping, and all of a sudden I hear this voice, "Nacho, you gotta go," and like a woman's voice, almost like my mother-in-law. And I was like, "What? Mary, you okay?" I was like calling out loud because I'm in the basement. I thought maybe Dawn got hurt or whatever. And so I got my clothes, went upstairs, and they're all sleeping, and she's sleeping on the couch, she's in his room, and I was like scratching my head, going, "Wow, that was different." I've heard voices before, but that was like clear can be. Like I'm talking to you right now, but very loud, like very like piercing that wakes you up. And it was like a deep bit, Nacho, you have to go, kind of like. And not too many people call me Nacho. My family does, but. And then I was bound and determined that I was going to do something. I didn't know what I was going to do. I had no clue. I was just going to. I was going to get involved somehow, and I wasn't sure. And then I kept watching and kept feeling. And then I saw little by little that things were popping up, coming out, kind of like when you set intentions or you start to attract the energy, you start to attract the feeds that maybe you missed in the past. And then I noticed that people were going. People were like, taking off. I saw a few posts, and I'm going, well, shoot, I should go. I don't know why I should go, but I should go.
Yeah, you felt like they had to. It was important that you were there.
Yeah, it was a calling. It was just like, so I posted, I'm going to Standing Rock, North Dakota, and of course everybody's like, why are you going there? Oh no, it's not in North Dakota, it's in South Dakota. I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, really, people, are you really gonna be like this? So that was pissing me off too. So that was kind of one of those things that was angering me, because instead of saying, well, yeah, that's awesome, supporting you, they were like contradicting you, and chastising you because you're going to go over there and interfere in something that's none of your business, in a sense. And so I posted that. One friend, his name is Alex, we'll call him Ringo. He's like, oh, I'll go with you. And so I called him out. I said, okay, cool. But send me a private message. He goes, you really going to go? I said, you're going now, right? Because you said you're going.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I guess so. And so he had to get off work and reschedule. He's an undocumented worker. And so here's an undocumented person going to,
take a stand
against this black snake and, what's going on in Sioux country out there. And I was really proud of him. I saw Paula's too post. That's what kind of inspired me to go to. She was talking about going. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. So that's another factor that made me want to go too. And then our post kind of crossed a little bit, and I saw she was leaving like a few days before me or whatever. And what turned out, she ended up going with a couple of people from Dayton area. And then I get a few days later, I get this message, call me ASAP, blah blah blah, and because these people, and she told me that the people who were going with her freaked out. They were freaking out. They were fearful. They have the right to be fearful of all the stuff they've probably seen. So basically, she got stuck, either going back to Cincinnati or finding another ride. And so they drove her to Columbus, and I told her, well, I'm not leaving until like Sunday, like morning. Yeah. So I'm not leaving at, so if that's okay with you. And she was fine with that. I'm sure at first she probably really wanted to get there like sooner and fast as she probably could, but it was the right time when we were supposed to go. And then I put the call out to give donations and for clothes, for food, whatever we needed. I actually asked for gas money so we can get there. I wasn't going to be bashful. I wasn't going to be one of those things that if I'm going to go out there, it's going to make it a mission. Like my ministerial service. To Standing Rock. And people came through. Yeah, I was here. Came and visited Paula while she was staying here, waiting to go with you, and just talked to her for a couple hours about why she was going and what she was feeling, and I donated some fudge for your trip. Yeah, we ate it. It was great. Good.
figured to use a little snack along the way. But more than that, I just offered my support, my prayers, and just part of me just wanted to be with you. That, and if things had been different, I would have been right there with you.
Sure.
Yeah, but it turned out the way it was supposed to, and so you guys left like late Sunday night, early morning.
Yeah. What's funny is Paula and I aren't really like the best of friends per se outside of this particular trip. I knew her, but I didn't really
hang out with her.
And same with Ringo. He's my friend, but I never really hung out with Ringo. So it's funny, we're just like these three completely opposite, somewhat like similar spirits going on this journey, and trusting that we're all going to make it there.
Yeah.
And, we were talking about what we're going to do, what's going to happen, what we're going to run into, the road's going to be blah, 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 and we take turns driving. And, of course, you know how I am. I always like to enjoy the trip versus,
Yeah, you're going to stop and see things.
So I stopped and saw some things. I saw the big buffalo. Nothing was as big as this house.
Yeah, huge.
It was huge.
Yeah,
then, and I was at the gas station, and I was talking to the girls at the coffee shop who were running the Caribou coffee shop. And I said, hey, have you guys seen the buffalo? And they're like, oh, yeah. Have you seen our crane? The big crane? I'm like, big crane? What do you mean big crane? I said, look out that window. I look out the window, and there's this humongous tall crane. And I'm like, what is the land of the giants? She goes, I go, everything's big in North Dakota, isn't it? She goes, not everything. I was like,
a local woman's point of view.
That was just kind of things I would run into.
Yeah. Well, those are both, all kidding aside, those are both very good signs, very good totems to see along the way there, for your journey too. But, Then
we saw the big white dude, the big corn guy on our way back. But we didn't take a picture of him.
Oh, okay. You can see a big white dude anywhere.
That's fine.
But no, that's cool. That's cool. And when you got there, I understand there were border patrol.
Yeah. Well, we didn't stop. We stopped one night, like part of the one night. We spent like 6 hours to sleep just to get our batteries charged. So we ended up staying in this hotel. Well, actually, it was a motel. It was a Motel 7.
Okay.
Just
a little plug for Motel 7.
There's a Motel 6, 8, and 7. So that's funny. And, we stayed there and we met Tony. I talked to Tony. He was an Indian guy from India. Mm-hmm. We actually did a broadcast from there one morning. I don't know if you guys saw that one, but we were kind of documenting our trip. We were talking about what we're preparing ourselves for, because this was all preparation. And finally we made it to we were going to go to Fargo, but we decided just to stay before. I've never been to Fargo. You saw there's a movie called Fargo, I think.
Right.
So it looks little, but it's actually really big. The town's really big. I was afraid we wouldn't find a hotel, but I was wrong about that one. But we got to North Dakota and traveling through the speed limit's like 75 miles an hour. Everybody goes about 80. And we saw rainbows and all kinds of cool stuff, sundogs and things like that. So we really enjoyed that. But eventually we finally, Minnesota, never go through Minnesota. The traffic's horrible. Okay.
Construction or?
No, it's just crazy, David. It was the most insane traffic I ever saw. I'm glad we breezed through there on the way back.
Yeah.
We made it to North Dakota. We made it to Bismarck, and that was kind of the place. There's a college called Russian College, so that was pretty interesting. Just the little things that I pick up on when I'm going through there. So the exit was supposed to be 155 to take us to the route that's not closed, and somehow I exited off 156 for some reason. And everything's divine intervention in the kind of life I live. And we just went down the wrong path in that particular moment, but it wasn't really the wrong path. Mm-hmm. It's the path that takes you to the place you want to be, but the end result, it's still closed regardless.
Yeah.
And so we're cruising through the signs that say "Do not the road closed."
Yeah.
We just kept going because that enough can get pulled over.
Yeah.
Crossing if you're not local traffic. It says it's open to local traffic, so I'm like, well, I'm local traffic.
I'm going local.
I'll just act like I belong here, and that's what saved me through this whole trip. Just acting like you belong there.
Yeah.
But then we got to this one point. We saw the security down there. We didn't know who they were at one time. We were just kind of guessing. All those cops down there, sheriffs or whatever. And then we saw the sign, like a big, the big lit sign. When you see the big lit sign, that's kind of a sign that you should probably not go any further.
Yeah.
2 miles ahead, road is closed with an exclamation points, you know. And so we turn off to the road. We turn left, and the next thing I know, you know, we're going, oh my God, how do we get over there, and how do we get around without going all the way back, backtracking and coming back in? You know, we would have done that if we had to. But and we're sitting there. And I think I texted all you guys to see if you guys could find me a route.
Yeah.
Adrian, did you get a text from me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I texted Mary, everybody, and but there was no response because they were jamming the signals. We didn't realize they were jamming the signals at the time. We didn't know why our stuff wasn't working properly. I couldn't calibrate, nothing. And then this little native guy, you know, pops up out of nowhere. I saw him coming through the rearview mirror. I'm like,
what?
I was just concerned that maybe some guy with a gun's going to like, you're on my property, because we were on someone's property in the fence. He pulls up to us and he looks out. He rolls his window down. And I roll my window down. I was like, hey, how you doing? He goes, I know where you're going. Follow me. That's exactly just like that. He said it like that. And I'm like, and Paul was laughing. She's like, yes. You know, she had more faith in it.
Yeah. It's more divine intervention.
Yeah. And so, and then my friend's like, he's going to rat us to the police. You know that, Iggy. I'm like, okay, I can see where you're coming from. So we drive down about a block or so to the next road where we passed, where the police were, which turns out to be Border Patrol. And we pull up. He's ahead of us. We're following him. He pulls up, and I'm like, oh man, this is what he does. He just gets people. He just catches them for the cops. You know, he's like a snare or some sort.
Yeah.
So the Border Patrol's talking to him. At that point, I didn't know it was Border Patrol. And the other guy comes to the window. He's like, hey, how you doing, guys? What's going on? Where are you going? I said, well, we're trying to go that way because we're trying to meet up with some friends. And he goes, who's your friend? He goes, well, he's our friend, and he's going to take us down this road. He goes, well, he can't go down this road. The road's closed. I said, well, he said he knows how to get us to where we need to be. He says, are you guys protesting? I said, no, we're not protesting. We're just trying to get on the other side of the bridge, trying to get through. And if I knew there was a casino there, I would have said we wouldn't go on gambling. But I didn't know. Now I do. If that happens, I'll let everybody know. Just tell me you're going to go to the casino. But so the Border Patrol's walking. They talk to him. They both talk to him. And then Paula goes, oh, my God, Iggy, that bald guy is the guy who was beating everybody up on the bridge. He's the guy. She goes, I go, are you sure? I mean, what is...
A couple bald guys.
And she's like, no. She showed me a picture, and she goes, that's him. I said, oh, my God, that is him. He's the one who was, like, whipping everybody with sticks. Like, he was, like, you know. And I was thinking, wow, I guess you're right. I said, you know, we were lucky he didn't talk to us because it probably would have been a different story. But they didn't see my friend in the back. The Border Patrol didn't see my friend in the back.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny. And I said, you know, I didn't know you were back there. And I had everything in bags, like these white kitchen bags. So it looked like trash. It looked like we were hauling trash more than anything.
Yeah.
So, you know, that kind of helped a little bit.
Right.
And they probably just thought we were throwing trash out. So the young Border Patrol comes back to the car and he goes, well, I guess you're going, but just got to keep up with him. He says he drives really fast. So he let him through. I was like, oh, my God. And Paula and Alex, we all look at each other, oh, my God, what the hell?
That old man must have had quite a line of explanation about
nobody was allowed down that road. This is access road to the pipeline.
Yeah.
We didn't know that until later. So we're driving, and the sheriff stops us like a mile later. He goes, where you guys going? And I go, well, we're following our buddy here. He says, well, where's he going? I said, well, he's leading us to the other side of this bridge. He said, well, the road's closed. You can't come through here. This is the pipeline runs through here. Nobody's allowed in there unless they have some type of clearance. And so our friend pulls around, and then the sheriff comes back to the car, and he goes, okay, you got to go down this road. They let us go. He goes, you got to go down this road to Joplin. It'll take you to Joplin. You just got to go down, left, and then back right and left, you know. And he goes, well, the little old guy knows where he's going, so just follow him. And so for about 30, 40 minutes, we were following this guy on this dirt road, and we can see the pipeline.
Like parallel right to
it was like all right there where it had been dug, already buried.
Mm-hmm.
And we came to a point where we actually were on top of it, like where the fresh soil, you know, it had just, and you could see all the security, the DAPL security looking at us with, and they're like, what's going on? You know, like,
guys.
how'd they get in here, you know? And then the little man stops at the stop sign, waves us with his hand. He comes like, "Oh, you guys probably don't think I know where I'm going, do you?" I said, No, we don't. He goes, "I know where I'm going." He goes, "Follow me." He says, "It's about 30 more minutes. And when you get to the blacktop, the pavement, you turn, right." He was going to send us to Cannibal, another place, which was where the actual stuff had happened.
Yeah, Cannibal's a small town right there.
But we actually wanted to go to Sacred Stone. So, well, where is that at Sacred Stone? Oh, no, then you got to go left. You got to go if you want to go. So he goes, okay. We took pictures with him. We thanked him, and I gave him a sage stick, and he was really grateful for that. He's like, he was like, I haven't had one in a while, like I really need it. And then he just waved us off, and we were all giggling and laughing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we drove down Route 24, and then we came up to a security checkpoint at Route 24 in 1806. We're like, oh man, well now what?
Yeah.
But it wasn't really a security point. It was just like a point in case things got rowdy. They would just close that road off.
Mm-hmm.
But they had like these mobile command centers,
Okay.
And they were just like, and I didn't know which way to turn. I was like, oh, it's a turn left or right. I'm kind of nervous. And he's like, the cop's looking at me like pointing left, right. Which way you going, buddy? Make up your mind. So I went left.
Yeah.
Because I knew that way was at least. But if we had kept going, we would run right into. Our journey might have taken us straight to Standing Rock versus Sacred Stone, where we ended up going. I don't know why we ended up going to Sacred Stone. For some reason, people said we should go there.
Okay. Now, what's the difference between Standing Rock and Sacred Stone?
Well, Standing Rock is actually on the treaty land, the 1851 treaty lands that is in question. What's happening there, who can be on that land. Where we ended up was actually on reservation land. It's actually Sioux land. It is land that is actually protected land. You can't just go on there. The Bureau of Indian Affairs is like in charge of that land.
Mm-hmm.
And supposedly, fingers in the air, no one's supposed to come into this land. And so we went to Sacred Stone. It's supposed to be a very prayerful place where you pray and you help and you do stuff. It's not really
like an intentional community.
Yeah, it's an intentional community, but it's for people who didn't really want to battle or be frontliners, or that they wanted to support the people who were on the front lines. So we came across to it, and first thing they ask you, hey, are you FBI, CIA, all the different things you can imagine they rattled off. Doppel, which is Dakota Pipeline Access people.
Mm-hmm.
Just, are you carrying any armament, anything and stuff? And we're like, nope. No.
Mm-hmm.
And so they let us through. Are you camping here? We were like, well, are we camping here? I'm like, so they said, well, we'll just put camping here just in case, so they wouldn't question our car.
Yeah.
And, we arrived.
Mm-hmm. What time of day was that?
It was during the afternoon.
Okay. So you had time to set up camp, get acquainted with the surroundings and some of the people before night fell anyway.
Yeah, we were a little lost. It's kind of, there's really no, like I was telling Adriana on the show last night, there's really no welcoming committee, and someone says, oh, welcome to Sacred Stone, This isn't like a festive environment. This isn't like Woodstockish or anything like that.
Yeah.
This is a resistance camp is the best scenario I can call it, where, these people are actually literally,
they're
defending, defending, and I don't want to say they're at war in a sense, but they are there to stand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't a party.
Yeah.
There was no drum circles and any fun activities per se.
Was there orientation that you got to?
Yeah, eventually when you start to figure out, because everybody just assumes everybody knows everybody. And some people are coming and going constantly. Every day, new people come and new people go, old people go.
Mm-hmm.
So in and out, there's constant flow. And we finally went to the Sacred Fire. They led us to that. And we introduced ourselves. And we actually met LaDonna. LaDonna is actually lives on the reservation. Her house is on top of the hill. She's the lady whose daughter was arrested and was put in the jail, stripped naked, without clothes on. They took all her clothes off and left her in the jail. She was arrested for speeding and she wasn't driving. So
yeah,
she's the one that I don't know. You guys probably heard about. I'm not sure, but yeah, there's very tense, very upset, very angry. The things that they were doing there.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Adriana, do you have any questions or comments to make yet?
Oh, no, I just am listening. I kind of went through a lot of this last night on the other show. So.
Sure. Well, don't be afraid to speak up.
I won't.
I know you won't. Wow. So there you were. I mean, was it a shock to you? How did you kind of acclimate to it, or?
Well, you don't know what you're getting into.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't know what you're really coming to, even though you followed it on the news or social media for a bit. You didn't really know what's happening. You know, just you had to put a lot of faith and trust in the process, at least for me. And neither did Paula, neither did Alex, especially Alex. He's just trusting that I knew what I was doing.
Right.
But he did okay. He adjusted very quickly, you know, and so did Paula. But we got to the Sacred Fire. There was an orientation for new people, what to expect, what not to expect. But the biggest thing that they taught us immediately, quickly, is misinformation. The misinformation runs rampant on all these camps. There are people who are in the camps, even our camp, who are not who they seem to be. They're there to create distrust, disharmony, and to agitate, to put, instill fear in people's, minds. You know, there's a lot of people suffering from post-traumatic stress disorders and stuff because of all this. And they made that very clear. And we met some of the characters, who there's warriors. There are people who are considered water protectors, but they're really true warriors. They're like, really, they were the ones who will take a bullet for, the cause. Mm-hmm. They don't want to, but they were willing to. And then you have your peaceful people who just pray, hold space for everybody. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot going on. There was a lot to process, a lot to take in. And then, just the fact when they plant that little seed in your head that you can't trust anybody, that in itself drains you, that in itself.
Yeah, it's got you always second guessing everyone.
Yeah.
That you're hearing. And
so everybody that you're looking at, you're not sure. And then you have to catch yourself how you're talking. Because you could create something that's not true too, because something you heard outside the camp, or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Now, did they put you right to work, or did they give you opportunities to do things, or how did they kind of determine what your best contributions could be to the camp?
Well, first of all, we asked where to put our donations and stuff. That was our main goal, to distribute the donations that we had brought and all the supplies we brought. Mm-hmm. And then they were grateful, but there's a big need for human help, like right. People help, because there's a lot of the stuff I saw were donated that had not even come out of the plastic bags yet. They've been there, and there's just not any manpower. That's the best way I can say.
Not enough hands to help.
Yeah. So now the work that needs to be done is building teepee poles, and there's the school. There's the mess hall, the kitchen that, you work on, or whatever they need you to do. So you have to kind of, I don't know why I'm yawning. Probably just tired from everything, from this whole trip. But, yeah, it's just, and if you have a skill, then you tell them you have a skill. You say, hey, I have a skill. I know how to do this or do that. Mm-hmm. And so they would kind of assign you to things.
They placed you on security?
Yeah, I got to help with security. Like, I actually got to go around with the guy who's the head of security, which was kind of cool. And that was kind of fun. And he was just telling me the things they do. Everybody has a different name there. All security guys their names aren't real names, because there's so much infiltration from people that they didn't actually give their name. Like the guy Steve, his name wasn't Steve. And then the reason I found this out was because when we were down by the check post, I said, "Oh, Steve sent us, over here," and he goes, "Who's Steve?" Yeah. And the guy was named Jake. Like, what's your name? He goes, "Well, I'm Jake. I'm Jake. But what's the, it was like a mod or miss," because they didn't know who we were. Right. So there were a lot of like
distrust.
No, they were testing us too. Yeah, they were testing us too, who we were. Mm-hmm. And so I just kind of broke away from that scenario. I didn't want to be part of that. That's too stressful. It was too. I could see what it was doing to the people who were already doing it. I was like, I don't want to do that for the next 4 or 5 days or however long I'm here. Yeah. So I ended up going into ceremony and praying, and then helping out with the kitchen stuff, where they asked me if I could help with the generators and pulling, getting things ready, and
you've got a handyman background to do
check the food too, and you see if it was smelling bad, or because You know, I had to kind of like, they didn't know, because they turn off the refrigerators a certain part of the day and stuff.
Well, even if people are infiltrating, they could even bring in food that had been tainted or poisoned even, you know?
Yeah, you'd be surprised.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of dogs running around. So, you know, your duties were whatever really ended up having. So I helped out in that capacity. But then eventually I just broke away from everything.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of went to the main camp and helped out there and did some things there through praying and giving suggestions and stuff. But I ended up ending up going, you know, okay, since this is all cool, it looks like it's handled, I need to find something to do. So during the ceremonies, I would sing the, you know, Che Ye Yellow song, and they loved that kind of stuff. And I did all kinds of different little things like that, ceremonial stuff. But then eventually I just wanted to be
just yourself.
Just, you know, myself. I just wanted to be a number. I didn't want to be, when I came there, I didn't tell anybody I was a shaman, I was a medicine man, I was a Nemanah. I didn't tell anybody nothing. My intentions were just to be treated and see how I get treated too, you know, as a normal Joe Schmo.
Right.
You know, I didn't want any entitlement. I didn't want any, you know, special treatment. Not that I was going to get it, but, you know, people get it because they come as, you know, representatives from different groups and stuff. But I didn't want to do that. I really wanted to humble myself.
So how
and
were
get
you
myself.
treated?
Sometimes offstandish, you know, like, you know, if you didn't really know, unless you engage them, they weren't really willing to engage you. And these are more, you know, it wasn't like I said, this wasn't fun camp. This was like, you know, this is real camp.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was going to meet anybody, I was the one who had to open my mouth and introduce myself, because a lot of people weren't really willing to do that. And I understand why, because of all the psychological warfare games that were being played. And it's a stressful situation. You know, regardless, wrong or right, it's a stressful situation what's going on down there. You know, this pipeline was supposed to be going through, you know, just outside of Bismarck. You know, if people want to know a little history about it, this pipeline was actually supposed to go outside of Bismarck, but the people who were there didn't want it in their county. And so, of course, it went through Sioux territory, through the treaty territory, Fort Laramie, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so since it's treaty land, they figured, well, it's treaty land, no one really owns it. You know, it's kind of managed by the Bureau of...
it's a gray area.
It's a gray area, yes. Yeah. That's the best word I've heard. Mm. So that really pissed people off. Who signed off on this? What's going to happen is when they find this paper, they're going to find out that a lot of their leadership signed off on this.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's going to be a problem for the leadership. That's going to be their issue, or whoever is in the Native community, whoever signed off on this, or whoever thinks they own these lands. Mm-hmm. But it butts right up next to the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation. And so when you see the pictures of Standing Rock, it's not necessarily on the treaty land, okay? But it runs along the pipeline runs through the territory, okay? And through that territory, what's happening? There's a portion of it that sits in the treaty land, and so the treaty lands, they're not supposed to be there. I guess they were in the North Camp, mm-hmm. which they were pushed off. The ones that you saw on all the videos, where they were actually blocking and not letting
dogs and everything. Yeah.
So they got all that stuff got bulldozed over and trampled on.
Okay. Is that where they uncovered the bones in the?
No, that's somewhere else.
Okay.
And I'll get to that.
Yeah.
That becomes the new front line.
Mm-hmm.
And so, pipe is already dug under the river, like it's already sitting there, but it can't go any further just because of all the people interfering and, you know, and protesting and pushing, and, you know, mandating that it not be done. They don't want this pipeline at all. It's not even negotiable to move it 100 miles the other direction. You know, that's what people don't quite understand, that they don't want it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they don't want it to even exist. You know, I don't know if it would have been a different story if it was near Bismarck. I'm not sure. It might be a different story because it's not in their area. But this pipeline, in order to move, is you can't move this anymore. You know, it's buried.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like costing millions and millions of dollars to whoever's invested in this.
Right. They'd have to abandon it.
Yeah, just have to call, you know, say, hey, it's done. We can't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But these people were willing to stay there until it's, you know, it doesn't move. They'll live there forever. Now, the government is playing a lot of psychological warfare with people, creating distrust, flying drones all night long. They have this unmanned like plane drone, and it just flies and and it's really loud and it just keeps going around and around and around this pattern that it has.
Mm-hmm.
And then at night it flies lower, so it's louder.
Sleep deprivation.
Yeah, sleep deprivation. And then in the morning they fire this sonic cannon, the sound, the screeching sound. It's like, wah! It's like you can hear it, and it's like penetrates your ear and goes into your inner ear, and it makes you really sick. It makes you want to throw up.
Wow.
And I'm like 2-3 miles away from it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's how piercing that sound is. And then the lights being on in the background, just on you, it just little annoyances like that and become very big very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of the elements, you have a hot days in the day, and then nights are butt cold.
Yeah, right. Right.
And it's not even winter yet.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And they jam your phones like from 9 to 9. There's no phone service. And if you don't have Verizon and they have a special descrambling box that blocks the signal, you're not going to get a signal. That's why all your friends who are there, people who are trying to get in contact, or they're trying to contact you and they can't, it's because they can't use their phones. They can't use their service.
Mm-hmm.
Very sparsely.
Mm-hmm.
Very sparsely.
Now, is this the pipeline company doing this, or is it in conjunction with government forces?
I think it's in conjunction. It's in conjunction.
Mm-hmm.
This reminds me of that movie with RoboCop. How they have that security company that patrols in the street. It's kind of reminds me of that scenario.
It's private, but it's militarized.
Yeah, it's private and militarized. Yeah, that's how it feels.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't know, up on the ridge, you have a big display of force on the ridge, up on the ridges.
Yeah. Black uniforms standing shoulder to shoulder.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, the land that you were talking about, where the bones were, that's Turtle Mountain, I think, or Turtle Hill. I'm not sure which one that was. But on that particular grounds, there's bones of infants, like 11 infants who were buried there,
mm-hmm.
and some elders and some sacred pipes were buried there. And they just romped through all that. I guess they dug it all up and tore it all up. And that's why that's why they're standing on that little strip of water, land to the water.
Yeah.
Do you see?
Yeah.
Because they want to go and reclaim it and get them back. And they won't let them. People have been maced and shot with rubber bullets and all kinds of crazy stuff.
Wow.
I actually had a sniper laser pointer on my chest. Several of us did. We didn't realize. Someone goes, oh, look. I was eating crackers and I looked down and I'm like, oh my God.
Wow.
So
it's almost a war zone.
Yeah, I mean, it is a war zone.
It could be a war zone very easily. Yeah.
And it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Mm-hmm.
And that all was happening in the 2 days I was there. Then on I think the third day, was it third or fourth day, the clergy showed up, and there was no drones, there was no police on the hills, no nothing. Then an occasional drone would fly in, occasional helicopter fly in, but there was none of that. The lights were still on, but there was no horn, no screeching, that sound in the morning.
Yeah. So they're kind of making a show of, it's not so bad there.
Yeah. They had one UN guy show up. One. And Amnesty International was there because people had been arrested, been put in dog kennels.
Mm-hmm.
And then LaDonna's daughter was, stripped naked and put in jail. I mean, do you really have to do that? I mean, that's disheartening.
It's intimidation for sure. And, it's hard to believe when you're describing this that this is the United States of America where, people are supposed to have rights to assemble and protest. And it sounds like those rights are just dependent upon whether you're standing in the way of the machine, the corporate machine or not.
Yeah. According to one lady who did research and dug up a treaty, went to Washington and got a treaty, says that the United States has been bankrupt since 1939. So anytime a corporation goes bankrupt, they lose all their privileges and rights to their treaty work. So the lands that are actually under treaty jurisdictions by the Bureau of Indian Affairs actually revert back to the Native Americans. Mm-hmm. That's the battle. That's the fight.
Is she fighting down in court then?
It's going to go to court.
Okay.
And so that's a battle people that aren't aware of either that's happening. And, there's a lot of misinformation on the internet too, so you got to be careful what you're reading too. There's a lot of stuff that people are posting. These are the facts. There's a thing called These Are the Facts. Be careful with the guys who are posting These Are the Facts. because a lot of those guys are from DAPL.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those guys are from the corporation, and they're trying to make it look like they're a bunch of ignorant Indians, basically.
Yeah.
You know, they know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But these people don't want that water contaminated. And, you know, to say, once that fracking's done, those pipes rust. And it could be 100 years from now, 200 years from now, but they're going to rust. They're going to leak.
Mm-hmm.
They leak already. They explode sometimes. And
well,
I know
seen that.
We know it's fracking. We know it's fracking petroleum that's going through that. We get that. So once the fracking's done, those pipes are abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
They're done. No one uses them again.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what happens when your pipes rust in your house and, you know, they leak.
Yeah.
You know, you don't take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in sub-zero weathers and stuff.
Yeah, with the extremes.
Extreme colds and temperatures. You know, so you know, when I watch these fact-setting signs, you know, they act like, oh, no, that's not true. You know, it's true. You know, I don't care. You know, I'm not a certified plumber, but I've done plumbing.
Mm-hmm.
And I know with extreme temperatures, things buckle and bend and bow, you know, and they, you know, whatever, they go through their change.
Right.
And then Mother Nature, you know, she does her, you know, stuff too.
Mm-hmm. And
then you have terrorism too. You have things that blow up, insurance. Right. You know, who's to say these guys won't blow it up later for insurance reasons? You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we watched Alaska. We've seen what happened in Alaska.
Right. You know, they say, well, there was a spill after it was out of the pipe and it was sort of ran aground on a reef or something. But there were minor spills too along the way too. And that pipe was engineered to the max because of those extremes. And they still had explosions at a pump station. They still had leakage. You know, a pipe. If something's going to happen, it's going to happen. You know,
because it's not natural to put that pipe in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a natural occurrence for it to live like that
and
to exist like that. And that's why they call it the black snake.
Right.
You know, that's a prophecy of the black snake. That's something that's been around Native culture for a long time. I think I had a vision of it. I didn't even know it was the black snake. You know, vision. I don't know how to in the sweat lodge. A couple Native American friends reminded me about that. Remember that vision you had in the sweat lodge you talking about? I said, yeah, now that you mention it, I just totally forgotten, you know. I didn't correlate the two.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So while the clergy were there, I understand that you said something to them.
Yeah, I'll start in the beginning with that one. How's that? So I'll lead up to where I want to go.
Sure.
So we were preparing for the front line. My friends were like so excited to go to the front line to help out however they can. But, you know, the information doesn't travel very well in these camps. So you don't know from one day to the next what's going to happen. But usually they gather around 6 a.m. But, of course, I'm a panda, and I'm cold, and I don't like getting up that early. I was like, you guys go ahead. I'll catch up with you. Mm-hmm. Okay? So they had been up since 6, and they're going through their routines or whatever, and they're exhausted. My friends are exhausted because they get up so early and have to go through the day. But my one friend ended up meeting a medicine man on the path across the thing, and he goes, well, will you teach me? He goes, well, usually we don't teach, but we're not. But when people ask us to teach, we have to teach them. So it's kind of like the contradiction of sorts. And so, you know, he taught him about pollen and some things, and so it was one of his aha moments for him. And then Paula, I don't know what she was doing that day, but I ended up taking my trip. I started walking, and everybody's like, oh, you get around real quick. And I'm like, I just started. I'm not sure what you're seeing or who you've seen, you know, or who you think I am. So it was kind of those magical moments, too. He's like, how'd you get here so fast? Everybody's like saying just little things like that. I was like,
I haven't been here.
And, you know, so I finally get to Standing Rock, which is a huge area, you know, full of people. And so I go to the Sacred Fire where I had been going a lot with my friend Alex and Paula and learning their customs. The natives were teaching our customs. I got to talk, too. I forgot to tell you that. I got to talk to the whole group the first day we arrived, too. I got to share our story about the little man and the car and stuff.
Oh, okay.
So I actually got this. Everybody could hear it in the whole campment. And they go back to going to the Sacred Fire. I remember going there, and they asked me to help them because I was doing things the way they liked. And they asked Alex, too, to help. And so Alex and I were to keep people from desecrating the Sacred Fire. And I remember this girl goes, oh, can I stand up here? And I would say just no and just leave it at that. But I said, do you stand up on your pews at your church? And she's like, no. Well, I'm like, she's trying to give me an excuse. I said, well, then there's your answer. I said, stand up on someone's church pew. This is equivalent to our church pew.
Right.
And then there was several ministers and stuff. They wanted to burn like these love letter notes, these thingies in the sacred fire.
Mm-hmm.
And the firekeeper said, absolutely not. He says, if you want to burn your little love notes or your prayer notes,
to God, yeah.
you create your own little fire someplace else down the way.
Mm-hmm.
This is our traditions. We want you to honor and respect our traditions. It was so amazing. And I can understand, why some of these people are so upset with a lot of people in their ways, with Christianity and with, Western religions and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Just the lack of disrespect for other people's ways. And, some people was like, there you go again. One guy, some natives were just like, there you go again,
Mm-hmm.
trying to dictate to us, your ways, and we didn't ask for it.
Right. That's important to understand, that you're there in their house.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You come in with an idea of, we're gonna do this and we're gonna have this over here. No, you need to go in and ask permission. You need to go in with humble and with respect and just learn. Just keep your eyes open and your mouth shut for a while and just learn it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so our job was just make sure that people didn't do things inappropriately to the fire. And I was kind of I don't know, I guess I was just kind of grossed out. Not that these people don't do good work and their intentions are pure to, share the word of God, but, with their little collars on their neck and their little, colored robes. I mean, not that the natives don't do that, but just.
It just seemed phony to you?
It turned me off a little bit. I'm a Christian man, I believe in God and stuff, but it was just one of those things where you're going. It made you think about maybe how when the first Catholics came to the lands and just looked above, the natives and how they were. There was an unspoken tension in my feeling, between the indigenous people, some indigenous, not all of them, some of them, and some of the clergy. The clergy were excited to be there and do their part. I give them that. But it was just really weird and odd. It was an odd feeling for me to see that, it almost like, I don't know, it was just kind of gross.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm saying that, but that's just how I felt.
Right.
I felt that way because just the way they were just disrespecting the sacred fire and they wanted to just do whatever they wanted to it. Like it was like a campfire. Oh yeah, it's a campfire, that's not the purpose of it. Mm-hmm. The purpose of it is to, go in, grab the tobacco, left hand, put it in your heart, pray, put the tobacco on there, and then go around in a clockwise manner. I had to correct a lot of people a few days prior too, but just in this particular moment. And then they started their march. They started walking, and I thought we were going to go to the water post. This is another thing when you don't know what's going on sometimes. But we ended up going to the bridge. We marched out of the gates into the bridge, and then there was like a stage prepared and ready to go. And I thought, typical church stuff, typical Christianity, Catholic, everybody,
Not a show, get up on the pulpit.
Get up on the pulpit, holding their signs, love, peace, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure they got some exposure for that, and hopefully it helps a little bit. But it just still didn't feel right. Something didn't feel right to me. It's just like, I've seen this before. It's like I've seen this before. It was like I was having a past life regression in the moment, where I was living a past life and saw how they treated, the indigenous, how they treated ancestors of mine. It was really strange, David and Adriana, how that was playing out in my body. Because the night before, I actually had an encounter with one of the elders, which he was talking about how he needed to see white faces on the front line and black faces and Asian faces. And he was condemning us, kind of chastising us because we weren't in the front lines. And, why we all need to be there, blah, 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 and this and that, And then, I don't know why you guys weren't on the direct front line and you guys were on the side. And that's when I got mad. And I said, with due respect, brother, I said, we were on the front lines. He goes, oh, I know. I'm just talking to the new people. I said, the new people haven't even been on the front line. I said, but being respectful, I said, we were led to go this way. If you wanted us to go this way, then someone should have told us that we had to go that way, all the way around or whatever. But you know what? We were already so rushed to go. You know, there's really no leadership. I said that, so that pissed him off. But I said, there's really no. I don't know. We don't know who's the leadership here. He said, you're being disrespectful to me. I said, I'm not being disrespectful. I'm just telling you, we have been on the front line. And I was getting a little hot, so I calmed down. Yeah. But, you know, maybe it was not right of me to do that. But at the same token, I wasn't going to sit there and watch all these young people, impressionable young people, be put on a front line without, because that camp was supposed to be about sacredness and respect. See, this is the things that happen. You have kind of militant people who really want people on the front line. Then you have other people who want to hold space. You have other groups of people who want you to hold space. Right. So this was an opportunity to open my mouth, I guess, because I had been silent for most of the time. And so it opened the door for other people to respectfully say, hey, excuse me, may I speak? And he wouldn't at first, and then some of the other elders were like, hey, let him speak, you know, you speaking all the time, you know. So people got to share. This one lady talked, this one young girl, she's probably in her 20s. She said she comes from privilege. She's a very wealthy family. And she said, you know, when I was on the front lines, they were spraying the natives, and they wouldn't spray me. They were almost like making fun of her in a sense, you know, like,
no, you're white. So
you're white. Yeah, you know. So she actually jumped in front and got maced and sprayed. They actually grabbed her for doing that, and they arrested her. She has a felony charges pending on her. But, you know, those are the kind of things that you hear. And then you heard other stories, too, people talking. So that takes me back to the bridge now, because some of that message that he said stuck to in my mind in the back that I wasn't aware of. And so I'm on the bridge, and I'm letting them set up their kumbaya session, like I call it. Yeah. And I'm filming, and I'm walking with the elders and the groups and the security that is there. And I didn't realize I was like passing checkpoints, and I'm filming like I was there. And someone goes, "Hey, do you know that guy?" I said, "Yeah, I know that guy." Just naturally. Like, "Oh, okay, yeah." And I got past the checkpoint, and I just kept filming, and I was filming the scene that had happened the week before.
And with the burning cars?
Yes, with the burning cars. And then finally there was a point where everybody just kind of stopped, because there was one guy who was in charge kind of, and everybody kind of respected that guy. So I stopped too. I didn't push my luck. And I'm filming and, you know, looking, and, you know, we're talking, and, you know, it was just like I was part of the group. Yeah, it's just kind of funny how it plays out sometimes over there.
Well, you're a minister too, so. Hey.
Yeah. Well, no, this wasn't the ministers. These were the natives, the native peoples. Oh, okay. The indigenous leadership. I'm amongst this leadership, and it's just kind of, and you know, Paula and Alex were watching from afar, and they're just like, "What's up there?" He goes, "How'd you get over there?" You know, they wouldn't let me through. I said, "I don't know. I just act like I belong here," you know. And so I walked in there, and then I finally went back, and as they're talking, and then the elders came with their eagle staff, kind of like the one that Philip has. That, you know, you've seen that one before. Yes. So they came in. These guys were really tall, really big men. Like, really, I've never seen men this tall. They just looked like they were the giants that we talk about sometimes on the show. Mm-hmm. That's what it reminded me of. And so they marched to the front, and they're meeting, and then a black cloud actually marched past too. Everyone's like, "Who's that guy?" You know, they were like, "Is he allowed to be here?" You know, so there was kind of a confusion. He's the guy I had to spat with. Yeah. It was dark, so he never knew who he talked to. So that's something I want to make clear to everybody. So he never saw my face. He just heard my voice. Right. But I could hear him like trying to figure out voices in the camp to see if he could find. But he went to the front, and the reason he was there is he wanted to see whatever was going on. He has a felony charge. If he gets arrested again, and he said he would be in jail for 80 years or more. Wow. That's how things are crazy down there. But as we're going, and I'm sitting there, and I'm watching this group here, and then the clergy's on the other side, right in front of the bridge. There's they made like a U, like a half circle, semicircle. And of course that's pretty, that's beautiful. But then I saw other clergy was kind of separated from them, and they were like on the bridge with us, watching and looking. And that's kind of when I said, "Hey, you know, they really need to see your white and black faces and Asian faces." There was like an Asian guy and a black lady and this two female ministers. And they're like, "What do you mean?" It says, "Well," I said, "you know, everybody thinks it's an Indian thing, but it's not an Indian thing. It's a human thing. You know, these are all the things that I was taught, you know, being just in the last few days I was there. Yeah. This is about everybody. You know, the water gets contaminated, blah, blah, blah. And I could see the little black lady goes, yeah, you're right. And so she starts marching towards the front, you know, thing. And then the other girls are like, should we go? And then one of the guys who's in charge of all the ministers, and he turns around and he's like, what are you doing? He says, you can't go over there. And he starts chastising them. And I'm going, and I go, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. He says, and then he jumps off the thing. He goes, hey, you guys all signed this paper saying that you know, it's like a contract of sorts. You can't go there. And you're not going to be involved in that. You're going to blah, 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 whatever they sign. I don't know what they sign. And that's what I got pissed off.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, I go, hey, I said, these people have free will. They can do whatever the fuck they want. And I said, just like that. You know, who are you? Oh, they have a contract and they can't. We told them we were going to stand together and unify, blah, blah, blah. I said, if you want to make a difference, you take all these people and you put them in the front. Right. So they can see their faces. You know, and I just got really agitated, and the natives were like, yeah. So the crowd started getting. They were trying to show peace, okay? Yeah. And I'm here agitating, and not on purpose, but just like, but I was getting fed up, you know, with what I was watching here, all this show, you know, and these people are like suffering because once they leave, these people are still there and suffering. Oh yeah. You know, so to me, it was a no-brainer, just, you know, and they were like, security came, and they're like, who's starting it? Who's inciting a riot? And then all the natives are like, oh, he went that way. Just like that. He went that way. Yeah. They looked at me and they're like, where'd he go? I said, he went that way. That's what they said. I saw him go that way. And, you know, they protected me, David. They stood up for me. They knew what I said. They heard that message. That message has probably been circulating in their circles. And, you know, and I told the minister, I said, you know what? You have, Jesus would have never stood up there and just sung songs. Jesus would have went over there and destroyed the temple, you know, where they were selling all of the things and that. Mm-hmm. And that's when things shifted. Yeah. Wow. And that's when a lot of people went over and they talked. I talked to the priest. The priest even left that circle and came. And I said, you know, you guys need to really be up there. You need to like present, you know, and show that you care. I mean, think of all the things you've done to these people in just the name of God. You know, I was talking like that. Mm-hmm. And so he mauled it, thought about it. It wasn't like a quick response. Right. And he talked to his buddies, and he's like, should I go up? You could tell, like, they're like pondering, you know. Right. And eventually he did. He went up there, and then the next guy went, the next priest.
So and slow transition over.
Yes. And then I was like, but we need more. I said, we need more. So I started talking to all of the, you know, the straggler ministers and pastors or whatever you want to call them. I said, hey, what church you from? There, so I'm from the Methodist. I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool. So you know the Catholic Church up there, right? I said, you guys going to go up there and represent too, right? You're going to be up there too. You don't want to be left out, right? Yeah, they're like, and you know how that pride kind of fits in, and they're like, no, that's right. Yeah, I'm going to go up there. Yeah, you're right. I need to say, well, yeah, you need to represent your denomination too, because you know don't want the Catholics to take all the credit for everything, right? You know, just kind of like, it was just funny, man. I was just like, man. And, you know, I was thinking about Adriana's book, you know, the one she's talking about the devil and all that, and the tempting, and, you know, I was like, am I tempting these guys to do something wrong? I mean, right? You know, how does this work? And that crossed my mind for a second, you know. I was like, no, it's not. This is just free will. You know, this is about making the right choices for yourself. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that guy, he knew, even when he saw me after, he just did not want to even talk to me.
The contract guy?
The contract guy. Yeah. He's like, and he was also in a ribbon shirt, like a Native American ribbon shirt. And I was like, I can't believe you're wearing a Native American ribbon shirt, and you were even saying that. Yeah. And then after everything was complete, like everything finished, they prayed and stuff one more, and then a lot of people came up to me and they were like shaking my hands and like, we remember you, we thank you. And you know, I wasn't looking for accolades, right? You know, but you know, it was just it was a good feeling to know that I had to say something, and then you know, Spirit led me that moment, and to you know, it was just powerful. And I was burning my sage, just sitting there like a little Buddha, just sitting there, and people were coming up and wanted to be smudged. I was doing that too. Yeah. After it was over, I don't know. I was in a weird place. I was in not a weird place. I was just in a different zone, like a whole. Yeah, I don't know. I was
timeless, almost like. It
was,
it's
like time didn't exist there. That's the best way to describe everything there. That there's no time.
Yeah.
You only have sunrise and sunset,
Mm-hmm.
and then you kind of know what kind of time it is during the day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember looking at my watch much. Barely used my phone because the battery just died too fast. But timeless, like it's almost like the time just stopped there.
And you could feel what it must have been like for people 200 years ago.
Yeah, and that's kind of how it's what it felt like. It felt like it felt like I was back in time with indigenous people living off the land.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it was for like the 4 days I was there. But it was intense. It was beautiful.
It's a much deeper experience than
it was really deep.
4 days. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you talk about your battery being drained. Was there a station where they were powering up?
Yeah. They call it Facebook Hill. Which would, I don't know why they call it that. I think they just call it Facebook Hill because people were on their Facebook.
Yeah.
But they had like these power stations. I guess Mark Garifalo, whatever his name is, he had donated a whole bunch of.
Oh, yeah, that's the star.
Yeah, he donated a bunch of solar panels, and some other people donated, anonymous donators, donated $2.5 million to help legal costs for people who were arrested. I actually had a telephone number on my arm written. I don't know if you saw that picture.
Yeah, I did.
That was a number I was supposed to call if I got arrested. So I would have legal counsel supporting me for free and get me out of jail.
Mm-hmm.
So that didn't come to that point. I ended up finding a magazine, like it wasn't lead, but I think it was a magazine round.
Mm-hmm.
Some lady had carried, or she may have kicked it. I'm not sure, but it fell and I grabbed it, picked it up. I'm like, oh my God, this has been shot. This is like a round shot.
Where was that at?
Just on the bridge. So she must have picked it up further ahead or kicked it, but it came to me. So I turned around, was gonna maybe she heard it falling, but I said, "What's mine?" I put it in my pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
the bullets had been fired there.
I don't know, but they said that magnesium rounds have been fired, so I'm not sure what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So there must be something that looks like magnesium, I guess, like a leadish type. That's probably what I picked up.
Yeah. So theoretically, that could have started the car fires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Theoretically, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then rubber bullets too, all over. And then there was actually a hat. One of the military guys lost their cap, and I was gonna grab it, and I go, no, I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna leave it there and take a picture of it.
See it, yeah.
Yeah. Because it represents something too.
Right.
But it was a war zone on that bridge. It looked like just someone just came in and just messed. It was just crazy.
Wow.
And then the Navy man showed up with the flag upside down. There was
on his RV? No,
just marched in.
Okay.
He was holding the flag, and he came in. He went up to the elders and stood with them. And that's court-martial. If anything, if he leaves the reservation or whatever, But he was a man holding the flag upside down and marching and supporting the natives. I guess 2 officers also took their badges and turned them in. The time we were down there, I didn't hear about this until I got
2
back.
2 police officers?
Yeah, I think 2 sheriff officers.
Wow. They just saw what was going on. They didn't.
I watched an interview right before we come on the air tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's TTL Politics. I think Myron Dewey had shared it a couple hours ago, where they interviewed that serviceman. He was in the service for 20 years in the Navy, and I would advise anybody. I'll go back and find that link and I'll post it to watch that interview with him and what he says about the Constitution and what he personally saw and experienced and why he put the flag upside down, because he said he just went behind, all of his backing from being in the military, what he learned about defending the oath, the Constitution, to defend it and the people. And it's a great interview. I had not saw that until right about 30 minutes before we went on the air.
Okay.
But I'll post that. Everybody should watch and listen to what he says, because this is coming from a serviceman who has served for 20 years, and it's really you can take it to heart. I mean, he's it was really just very touching. I was proud knowing
Good.
that at least one man did that and said that did
Awesome.
represent our, this country.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is. It is.
It's not Woodstock. I'll say that right now. It's
Mm-hmm.
not. It's not. If you think you're going to go there and just have fun, you can have fun, but it's not going to be the fun you think you're going to have. It's not. That's not why you go there.
Right.
You don't go there to entertain yourself. You go there to help, meditate, pray, whatever you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Stand the front lines, help in the kitchen, feed people, eat the food that's made, because there's tons of food going to waste because there's just not enough people down there.
Mm-hmm.
So they need a lot of supplies down there for the winter. Winter's coming, and a lot of canned goods need to be delivered. A lot of help if you can help build things. They need people who can build things. The biggest thing, they need blankets and different things like that, because there's a lot of people who go there and they're not prepared to go there. I'm one of those people. I was somewhat prepared but not prepared. I didn't know what I was getting into. So you need to really know what you're going. And the women have to wear skirts when they're there, when they're going into ceremony, if they're going to go to the front line. They any other time you can wear your jeans or whatever. But when you're going to be involved in any type of helping, in the native way, you need to have a skirt. That was made very clear to the women.
Mm-hmm.
That you're not just going to walk around however you want to walk around. That's just their culture.
Sure.
So you can't throw the I'm not going to do. You can't do that. Mm-mm. You're in another country per se. You're someplace else.
Right.
Be an ambassador and learn the ways.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be a person who doesn't want to hair. It's like going to another country and doing whatever you want to do. You can't.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not just there to take selfies and say you were there at the
Right.
Standing Rock.
I mean, people do that, and I did that, but that's because it's history.
Yeah.
But you're not there to document. Just look at me. Well, I'm in the front line.
Yeah. Yeah.
You go to the front line, you struggle, and you fight, and you stand, or you just stay silent. You don't say anything. You do something.
Mm-hmm.
Someone gets hurt, you help pull them out, whatever.
Right.
How
often in a day were advances made? I mean,
well,
does it kind of depend?
It really depends, because I think what's happening now is somebody is helping them strategically plan things now. Someone's come in there, because in the past it was just kind of random, like if they get pissed off, they just randomly go.
Yeah.
I think there are people who are actually teaching them how to protest, how to march, and how to lock arms. We had a preparation class. I forget the name they used, but where we actually prepared, we create like lines and formations and stuff. I got to be on that group too. Mm-hmm. So I had to be like the team captain to like make these formations. We couldn't make the same formation that the other group we made. So if they had locked arms, we had to like do something else.
Right.
We had to stagger or whatever. And if they were on the ground, we lay on the back. And we had to do the opposite or something that's similar.
So almost your coaching abilities came into play there a little.
Yeah, it was pretty cool though.
Yeah.
But I heard some crazy stories. Like some people are just well known for their disruption and their fight for humanity, for human rights. One girl was from Chicago. She's like, oh, when I go to Chicago and the police see me, they just cringe, because they make these things called I think they're called lockers or something like that, where they're actually a 2 by 26 inches, full of concrete in the middle, and they have like these little latches inside, and then you actually put your arm in them inside the tubes, and you lock yourself arm to arm, and then they have to cut through this, and they have to break. That's the only way they can break the line, or they can actually pick up the whole line, and people's arms get broken and stuff. And she's saying her job is to figure out how many tools they have, how many trucks, and what kind of tools they have, and what kind of lock boxes they're going to use for these protests. So it's it's like a science.
Right.
I was like, because I learned a lot going, man, I'm on the other side of every, of all the things that, I look at on TV. I'm here going, wow, this is pretty amazing. This is pretty, it's scary too. Because if you're the guy on the outside, you're the first one to get dinged up pretty bad,
Yeah. Yeah. But there's strength and unity too. With standing together. And
that's the point. I guess that's the whole point, strength and unity, that people working together for a cause. And I think it's going to play out for a long time. Right. I don't think it's going to be one of those things. What I hope doesn't happen, because something happened just I think somebody, was it you, Adriana, who posted that picture where the guy came in with a rifle with the AK-47?
I posted that interview. Yeah, that's actually a really good interview to listen to. That's from the same company that did the one with the serviceman I'm talking about.
Yeah, so this guy came.
Was he a DAPL?
He was a DAPL. He was DAPL. No, he was a DAPL. He just DAPL.
Personnel. Mm-hmm.
You know, no one's supposed to come in with firearms or anything. This guy was trying to incite, you know, some serious harm.
Right.
And they let him go.
Mm-hmm.
No charges?
Yeah,
no charges.
No charges or anything.
They said that he was attacked and his hand was hurt.
Yeah, and that video proves that he wasn't. So
yeah,
they show a video of him and the actual attack itself, where he has that rifle in his hands, and you know there aren't any wounds in his hands or anything. That's another good one to watch. So.
Well, you know, there are factions on either side that want to see this go all the way. They want to see something happen. You know, you said that there were hardcore Native Americans who said they were tired of all this peaceful stuff. We're ready to fight and we're ready to die for this.
You're right.
Yeah.
That was made very clear to me, that there are people who think the way things are going right now should be sped up. Ineffective, not playing out into the favor.
Mm-hmm. And then you got some of the police and some of the other officers who are ready and waiting to just use all of their tactics and all of their weaponry, you know. So those two touch points, you know, it's the people in the middle that kind of keep those away from sparking something, but the potential is always there.
Well, like I told Adriana, I said what I don't want to see happen is another Kent State type thing. Because it takes one person to have an itchy finger and just release a round. And there's snipers up there, man.
With live rounds?
With live rounds. You know, there's no rubber bullets there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's serious business. And, you know, you have these people who have no weapons, or at least they say they don't.
Mm-hmm.
I would have to say they don't, but, you know.
They could probably get someone if they wanted to.
They might have stuff buried. Who knows? I don't know. But I'm just throwing that out there. I'm saying that is. But I tell you, if someone does get shot, it's not going to be pretty.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? It's going to get it'll get ugly really fast. Mm-hmm. These people are very passionate about what they're doing. This is no joke. This is no you know, day at the fair. You know, they look at the guy next to you. They look at me and people like myself, and they're like, "You going to be with us or against us?" Because, you know, if you're against us, you might as well just leave. You know, we don't want to hear anything about what you want to say about the pipeline. You know, if it's good, blah blah blah. You can coexist with it. There's no way coexisting with the black snake. There's just no. That's not an option.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they know that it could happen, but you know what? They're going to sit there until they're 100, and that pipeline ain't going to move. Mm-hmm. That's what they were willing to do.
Right. And then on the other side, you've got the people who are pushing and pushing and pushing every day. That pipeline's got to get completed. We're losing money.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Of course that's happening.
Yeah.
But you know what?
But in between there, you've got people from all over the world, just in this past week, have been holding protests all over the world. How long can our White House not hold a press conference of some sort and address this situation when the whole world's starting to get involved?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just, you know, that's what I'm ashamed of, is that you don't get a response other than we're going to wait and see how it plays out.
Oh my God!
And in the meantime, you know, from what I've read from some other things that I've seen is, you know, he signed off on 2 other pipeline deals somewhere else. So, and then another good one that I saw was when, you know, two years ago, I think it was, back in maybe 2014, where he was promising all the Native American, you know, people what he was going to stand by and do for them and their treaties and everything else. And he hasn't done squat. And I've seen so many people in their posts say, well, what you don't understand is that he can't. Well, give me a freaking break, people. Yes, he can. He didn't get in that office. You know, he didn't get in that office because he couldn't do things. So give me a break. Where's the Department, of Defense on this one? Since there's all kinds of FCC and with the drones and the stingrays and stuff and violations there and the human rights violations. Where's all the head of those departments up there in that big house on our hill coming to do anything? And like I pointed out last night and on my post earlier today, where's ABC, CBS, NBC hiding down in the hole with Fox? They aren't reporting squat. Our media, has also got their little fingers in the pile.
They get told what to do too. Yeah, exactly.
No, Obama can pardon the worst criminals. Suggest this and that.
Oh, hey, he can put $1.5 billion in cash on an airplane and send it. Yeah, send it where? Why don't you send $1.5 billion to Standing Rock then, Obama? That's what I'd like to ask.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's have military tanks roll up on their side for a change.
Why can't he be the president and say, you know what, I'm going to make a difference in indigenous life. The pipeline doesn't go any further.
That's my point. He said that 2 years ago. There's a good ad out there right now where they're showing exactly what he promised when he stood up with the chiefs of the tribes it's either 2 or 3 years ago, and everything he promised them then. And he hasn't done any of that. And you know what? It doesn't matter because as of tomorrow, he's out of there. And that's why he really don't give a flying rat's ass.
Yeah. We'll wait and see how it plays out. Yeah, we'll wait and see until after I'm out of office.
I mean, these are people's lives, man. Wait to play. Have you watched what's been playing out?
Yeah.
What more do you want to play out? Are you going to wait till somebody gets killed? There's an 11-year-old boy who was shot with a high-powered beanbag, and it collapsed his lungs. I mean, and nobody cares. I mean, more people cared about the Cubs winning the World Series and having the third largest human gathering in history of the world. 5 million people in one place
for a baseball game.
And we can't send.
That service man brought that up in that interview.
That's for me. That's really disappointing. Next time maybe they should hold the Cubs Series. Their World, not the Cubs, but the Cubs celebration at Standing Rock. Give everybody Cub hat.
Yeah.
Well, obviously that's
our
what
priorities
it would
are
take
screwed,
to get.
Man.
Yeah, that's what it would take to get that many people there. Is a sports party.
The thing is, nobody cares.
A
lot of people, they just don't care about it unless it's on their street affecting their lives, and it's just over there. It's just a bunch of Native Americans.
I was kind of like that, David. I was kind of like, well, how does that affect me? How does that affect me? But you know what? It affects me tremendously.
Right.
I don't look at the news the same anyway. I don't look at anybody's post the same anyway. Now that I watch, when I'm on Facebook, I don't look at it the same anymore. Like I'm not so naive anymore to just say, hey, that's it. That's the truth. Like even with Hillary with her emails, that's not the truth. When the FBI guy, changing his mind, that's not the truth. There's more under the surface. Wonder what happened. They can't even. They won't even help these people.
That's media manipulation. Of what you are going to see. I think everybody ought to just complain to our major ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, all of them. I think that a lot of complaints need to start going in there. There's a thing going around on 11/11, which is this Friday, I think. To not buy any gasoline. Buy your gas the day before, the day after. Don't buy a drop of it on that day. Well, maybe everybody ought to turn off their news that day, too, so that ABC, CBS, and NBC and Fox don't get their ratings. Maybe they ought to do that with the media.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
It's a great idea.
Seriously.
And what's really sad is to come back to this world. Okay, and this is probably the hardest part for me because I really wanted to stay. I really felt like my services were needed there. And I really wanted to, but I knew my friend had to get back. I knew Paula was staying, and I had the capacity to stay, a little bit longer. And I was so sad. I'm kind of almost heartbroken to leave. Like I felt like I didn't finish everything that I needed to do.
Yeah.
And as I came back to the other world, I don't want to call it the real world, the other world.
Artificial reality we have here.
It
Our
was.
little box.
I was when I went to the gas station that's in the reservation next to the casino. It says no Dapple anti-Dapple gear sold here. I'm thinking, well, that's weird. It's because Dapple gambles at this casino. And so I'm going, so there's the contradictions, and all the things that you see. You start to see the world again for how it really is.
Right.
And as you're traveling down the road, the highway patrol from Ohio highway patrol is driving by, and I just flip my finger out, just like that. I mean, what the fuck are they doing there?
Yeah.
What business do they have in?
Oh, they were there in North Dakota.
Oh yeah. One passed me. I was put my finger out the window. I didn't care if I got pulled over. At that point, I was so angry. Mm-hmm. They probably have seen that all day. Mm-hmm. And then as we got closer to more concrete, and we got closer to the roads,
cities,
and the city, and I couldn't get on Route 94. I couldn't find it for some reason. I had my GPS still wasn't working. I mean, I pulled over in Arby's and asked somebody, and then my GPS started working, and then we got on 94, and my truck light, the engine light comes on, and I'm all freaked out. I'm thinking, everything's just starting to get into your head a little bit.
Yeah.
I just prayed, just calm down, and put more oil in my car, and everything's worked out. No car issues. But as you get to like the bigger cities like Chicago and stuff like that,
on ramps, off ramps, traffic.
I got so violently sick. I couldn't drive. I had to tell my friend to drive. I said, I can't drive, man. I'm just like sick. I can't drive. I can't sit here and look at all this stuff. All this stuff just disgusts me, makes me sick. I don't know how people can live in this energy, in this concrete jungle. And I was praying to get out of the city. Once we got out, and it was so big city, and I just my whole mindset was just like, what am I going to come home to? What am I coming home to? Mm-hmm. Am I coming home to? What situation am I coming home to? Because my kids hadn't sent me any messages. No one really from my family talked to me. They were more concerned about me coming home. My dad was scared for my life. My mom was too, which is rightfully so. There was no welcome meal, or whatever for me. And not that I was expecting that, but I was just like, my mind was just like there. It's still there.
Yeah.
I look here and I drove around today doing what I do.
But it's like you're half here and half not.
Yeah, I'm just half here and half not. It's like you saw how other people can live. Here. Yeah, you can see how other people can live. You can live not living like this. It's very possible, very capable. I mean, you have to sacrifice a little bit and then get adjusted. But there's no cost here. There's no. Here's a simulation. You work, you get up, you pay your bills, you do your stuff, and you do it again.
You get a little time for
yourself. And you do it again. Yep. And then Friday and Saturday come by, and Sunday you're like, oh, I get to celebrate for 2 days. Mm-hmm. Why can't every day be a celebration? Why can't I do that every day? You start to wonder. You're in this system,
right? It's a machine.
And just like right now, it's just like I haven't really been on technology today except just messing around. I don't even want to be on it.
Yeah.
I washed my truck today. I went to wash my truck, clean it up, in case I decide to leave next week or 2 weeks from now or whatever. And just have it ready to go and help people out. I don't even know what my mission is to come back here, just to share my thoughts, what I went through and what these people went through. Maybe that's all I'm supposed to do. But it doesn't feel like it's enough. I know people want me to do rallies and do marches, but my mind's not there to do that right now. I'm not in that capacity to go I'm going to go do this.
Mm-hmm. You need to process a little more, or you need to really be told what your next assignment is.
Yeah. We do drum circles or whatever, but, I don't feel like that helps here.
Yeah.
I don't feel that if you don't feel what I felt, it's hard to feel it. I mean, you can kind of feel it just because I'm sharing my thoughts with you. But once you go down there, you don't want to come back because you just fall in love with the land, the people. everything there is it's just so different. The life out there. And I know it's bitter cold. I know I probably would have a hard time, but you know what? I'm willing to take that sacrifice.
Because you're part of a community that really cares.
Well, we have a cause. We have a cause. We have a common cause. We all do.
Mm-hmm.
It's our survival to have clean, fresh water. Not to be pushed around, not to be manipulated by the system, not to just think that corporations can just do whatever the hell they want to us.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about this on the show a lot, but you know what? I got to firsthand, be there.
You were on the front lines in the trenches about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you saw the people.
I saw their faces. I saw the anger. I see the leather in their face. I see, the tears in their eyes. This is not a joke. This is not
a weekend event.
No, this is real. This is life-altering, mind-changing, psychological warfare. You never come back the same. I'm not damaged by any means, but what I saw and what I experienced, no one should have to experience that. No child who's there should have to worry about, getting a rubber bullet shot in the freaking eye, or in the chest or in the ass, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
And it's happening.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And people come and go, and people are there a short time. They share their stories. But I'm watching Paula's post. She's building yurts and helping and marching, and I'm not jealous of her. I'm proud of her. That she has stepped up. That she stepped out of her cave.
Right.
She stepped out of her cave.
I've seen such a change in her. Her life has purpose and meaning now that is beyond anything I've ever even probably experienced myself or seen her experience.
Yeah.
And she's happy. She's exactly where she needs to be, and who knows? She may not come back.
She may not.
Yeah.
And it's not for us to judge.
Mm-hmm.
Her family was really down on her for staying, but you know what? She talked to me. I said, you got to do what you want.
Right.
Because in the end, it doesn't really matter what they want.
Mm-hmm.
They know what they want.
Yeah.
If you want what they want, then go back.
I saw a post on Facebook or a quote said, the biggest cage is that we put ourselves in is when we're afraid of what other people think.
Yeah.
And it's true. It's true. Well, I had a little revelation. I don't know about revelation, but it's kind of an aha moment when I was walking my dogs today.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, here. I usually let Bo take the lead and he'll go where he wants to go, but I've got an overall agenda about where I want to, when I wanted this to end and how I want to get back home. And so, I'll try to guide him. I'll let him have all the leash, but then I'll pull it in a little bit and try to, and he'll put his feet down and he'll kind of resist, but I'll coax him back or, get him to understand that it's not going to happen. So, and then when push comes to shove and he won't go anymore, I'll pick him up. I'll carry him myself, and he fully expects that. But I thought about that's almost the way we're treated in our society. We're given enough freedom to make us think we're free, and we kind of get to go sort of the way we want to go. But when it comes to boundaries and overall agendas, that's when the leash is pulled on us. That's when we're even picked up and carried to where we need to be, by force, because we're not in control. We are being controlled, and we're being directed by the people that we supposedly elected to and trust to be our servants. It's not that way anymore. So that's the reality of the world we live in. Mm-hmm. That's the reality of the world we live in today, and so it's going to take something to get us back beyond that if we're going to move into a place of being responsible for our own lives again and being accountable and being able to do the things that we want to do. It's comfortable to be in that kind of situation, to almost be a slave in a way because, at least, your life is directed and taken care of. But to be free, you have to risk things. You have to challenge. You have to, be risk of failure or even your life not working out anymore. So, but that's the kind of sacrifice and the kind of mindset that I believe we need to get back to if we're ever going to be anything more than just pawns and puppets in the system. As much as we talk about it being wrong, every day I go to work, I drive my car, I contribute my effort and my labor to a corporation that, is part of the bigger machine. So, I'm part of it too,
Right.
Only where you were at probably is the only place where you've stepped outside of the machine, and
the machine probably knows that I've stepped out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
I'm pretty aware that, you know, my picture is probably on a list someplace now, if it wasn't before.
Right.
You know, and I really don't care. My dad wasn't worried about that. You know what? I'm at the point where, you know what? You got to do the right things.
Who gives a shit?
You know, you got to do the right things. I mean, either my family, my daughter and my son-in-law who's in the Navy was concerned about, because they have issues. They kind of take it out on them, on the servicemen for their families being protesters and stuff. And they demote them in ranks and stuff when they're family. And you know what? I told my daughter, I said, hey, you know what? I'm sorry, but I cannot. Jake joined the Navy. I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry.
You've got your own calling.
I have my calling. He has his calling. And I'm going to do what I feel is right for my family, for me. And I'm not going to be, you know, be in servitude to something that's not my calling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't owe the military anything. He does. You do. I don't.
Right.
You know,
right.
I'm gonna stand there and fight for what I think is right for everybody, not just the natives, because this affects everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's life, it's generations, it's human life that is at stake.
Yes.
You know,
that's right.
All the opposing forces out there just want to put a red face on it, and like they always have, you know, and that's not what it is.
Exactly.
Put any color of face on it, because every color in the world lives in this country right now. Every denomination out there, every race is here in this country. You know, we were the country that, you know, that everybody wanted to come to, because it was a new life and supposedly you're free, you know, but this cause, this is about life. You can take the collars off of all of it, because it doesn't have anything really to do with the color of your face, your skin, what your religion is. It doesn't matter. You don't have water, you don't live. Your kids don't live, your grandkids don't live.
Yeah.
That's right. You can be a billionaire, and if you don't have water, it doesn't matter.
You're still not going to live.
Right.
That's right. You might be able to stockpile some water, but even that water that's in those plastic contaminated jugs isn't going to last forever, honey.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
That's right.
There's no more us versus them. It's just us, you know. And when all that falls away, you know, and we realize that, I hope it's not too late to make the changes that need to be made. But until then, you know, we are being pitted against one another, you know, and when really, you know, the truth is, you know, we are one. We are just one human race that just needs to get our act together and quit doing all this crazy stuff to one another and start to live and start to unite and support one another. You know, and I hope it happens relatively easily, but I have a feeling we're going to have to go through some things in order for it to happen and really see the folly and the error of our ways. And however that's going to play out is to be determined, but this is part of it. This is a very important part of it. When history looks back and looks at what's going on now, I think it's going to be very apparent that these are the first struggles, you know, the first tuggings at the chain that have kept us in place for so long. And whether we get ourselves free like Houdini and just kind of go, hey, look at this, you know, or it takes some real struggling and some pain and some you know, sacrifice to make it happen. That's to be determined. But this is real, folks. This is our real struggle, you know. And it's happening right here, right now in this country. So if you're called to go, just be cautious with what we've said on the show tonight. If you go out there, be prepared and be humble, be respectful, be open eyes and open mind. Don't go in there trying to teach what you think they need to hear, but to learn what they have to teach you.
Absolutely.
You know, go in there.
The causes that you can. If you can't go there in person, like a lot of us can't, not right now anyway, you can donate. You know, there's plenty of organizations. Just find the right one.
Sure, there might even be somebody set up with a PayPal account for those folks, or somebody who's collecting money. But be careful with that too. You want to make sure it's legitimate.
Right.
If you go down,
Careful
there's actually message boards where they actually set up message boards or announcements where people who are traveling back to certain cities. So you're never without a ride. Mm-hmm. So there's always someone coming and going. So that's the beauty about that. Like if Paula wanted to come home tonight, she probably could find somebody going back to Ohio to Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things that are networking. There's a lot of good networking in that aspect. One thing I didn't say is that when the natives there, the indigenous people there, they said they put the call out for help. The first people to show up were the hippies. They said the hippies were the first people to come.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that they wanted to make very clear. And they say, you guys, the hippies came first. Not to be derogatory towards your, the word hippie, but you folks know how to live like this. You know how to adjust. You know how to live off the land. And you know what? The hippies were, and they still are. And you know what? And they're on the front lines with them.
So they're going to be respected.
Yeah. So the hippies actually are held in high respect, actually, in a sense, as long as you're doing good things, I guess.
Right. But the other native tribes have come too,
Yeah, there's beautiful stuff, beautiful tribes coming. The Hopi came the other day. They ran from Arizona, where you were at.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, and so there was a horse group. 50 people came on horses. So I'm not sure where they came from. I forget. I have to look that up. I mean, the Aztecs came on the 11th, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
This reminds me of Avatar.
Yeah.
It's a lot like that, where the tribes were united finally against the big machine that was trying to eat up their...
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You have to watch Avatar again.
Now that I'm thinking
a lot of people pointed that out.
We should have an Avatar movie.
A night, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Paint ourselves blue or something.
Yeah. No, but thanks for allowing me to share my thoughts and my, feelings about this. I know there's a lot. I could sit here for hours and talk about it. Mm-hmm. Just there's little things that I probably forgot to mention, but I think I hit the most important things. The helicopter was blowing down on me when I was trying to cross the prairie to go to the front line. Mm-hmm. There's a video of me doing that. I guess I was showing the helicopter and it's like on top of me, just like trying to
disturb you.
Yeah, disturb me. Mm-hmm. And then they did that during a ceremony, water ceremony. Women were having a water ceremony. The helicopter from DAPL was like over top, trying to just shit like that.
Yeah, that's almost that's evil. That's just totally that.
I can't believe they could even get away with that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now they put restrictions on the Native Americans using drones there.
But they use drones all the time.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And those are people without any compassion.
Yeah, I guess you're right. They strongly believe in what they're doing too. That they're
obviously.
That they're
willing to hurt somebody. That's the difference.
Yeah.
I don't think the indigenous people they really want to hurt anybody. They just want to be heard. Mm-hmm. They don't want it. And these guys, these military guys, these DAPL and the Morton County Police, they don't care. Mm-hmm. They don't even respect the Bureau of Indian Affairs, service they have, the BIA. So that tells you enough right there.
That's the only way they can sleep at night. Probably is just telling them that they're right and they're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Go and support in any way you can. There's plenty of other ways. You can write, you can call, you can just make your voice heard. At some point they've got to notice that the world is watching.
I think after the election, I think you'll see a lot. You'll see a big change. Mm-hmm. You'll start to get more exposure because they need something. They need something. Right now, they only report when things get hot and heated.
Well, the bad thing is even if they do report, they're probably not going to report the truth.
No, they're not.
That's what we have to rely on, our friends and neighbors that have gone out there and are photographing and live streaming and whatever they can. I want to take a moment and just tell how proud I am of you going and doing what you did, and just stepping out of your comfort zone, your life. And just I'm so proud to be your friend, and
Thank you.
And just it was amazing and continues to be amazing. So
I was going to take off all my clothes and go in the water, just walk across and get pelted by rubber bullets.
Wow, really?
I was willing to do that. I was just going to take off. I was going to take off all my clothes. It didn't happen because the minister thing happened.
Yeah.
The clergy happened. I don't think it would have had the same effect if I had taken my clothes off on the bridge.
Yeah.
But in the water, I could see where that would have.
Coming at you from Naked Shaman Ministries.
Naked Shaman.
That's how powerful you feel when you're there, huh?
I was like,
I'm down for it.
I was ready to like moon them, you know, and I was thinking I'm probably gonna get a rubber bullet in the ass for that.
Yeah.
But you know, I just wanted to, you know, I wanted to do something to just spark, like, oh well, look at this guy, you know,
Make an impact.
You know, something that just triggers, you know, and it goes viral, and the people see, you know, people are going naked to battle, you know.
Right.
But I was going to do that. That was already in my mind. And you know what? Spirit was like, not today.
Not today.
You know, not today. You're going to go do this on the bridge today. You're going to go and stir the pot a little bit without getting too crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I did.
That had its own effect.
I already kind of knew that was going to happen. I knew that because I have issues with organized religion.
Clergy.
Yeah, with clergy.
Mm-hmm.
I have issues with that just because things that have happened to me as a child.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the way that the church has done wrong, you can't really. Sometimes it's hard to rewrite those wrongs, you know. Because they have the power now today. That, you know, here's something that was really interesting. The Pope has a lot of say in what happens here.
Oh yeah.
The Pope has a lot of, because the Franciscan, you know, the Dominican priests and stuff, there's treaties and stuff within the Catholic Church that ride inside these riders. The church the Pope can actually stop all this. That was made very clear by
he can stop the pipeline if
yes,
you
he can.
to. Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure how that plays and how that works. My dad was trying to explain it to me, but the Pope can actually. This world is really interesting. Now that this is all coming out, I think there's a lot of reasons why they don't want this to come out on the news, because there's a lot of things that will be exposed. A lot of exposure.
Right.
If the Pope has influence on this and can change this and the direction of this,
what else?
Makes you wonder.
Right.
And this wasn't just told by me. This was also told by the lady who's got the treaties from the government, you know, who ended up getting the treaties. She says, the Pope can stop this. There was one of our sisters who went and talked to the Pope, and the Pope was like, you know, they have a lot of investments here, a lot of money here. So it makes you wonder what the church has, what their hand is in here.
We're going to let it play out for a while.
Well, look what their first hand was here.
Right.
Think about that. So
I'm just curious.
That's probably why the Pope hasn't said anything either.
So it's turning into an interesting thing.
It really is.
Folks, tomorrow, exercise your right to vote or not vote. Just do what you can. You know, that's my closing thought. You know, I'm going to go to the polls at like 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to be one of the first people there. I want to be first. So I'm sure some other guy.
Be there for you, but
it's like I want to be first.
I'm going after work about 3:30, 4 o'clock.
Yeah, I'm going to go early because I just know it's going to be crazy.
Yep.
Maybe not in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
What's that?
I'm going early too.
I'm going early.
I think it should be a national holiday. Yeah.
And I'm going to tell everybody right now who I'm voting for. So you guys ready? I'm voting for